So it looks like we have Kelly Dixon joining us. Lewis is a first-year teacher for at least CSP. Kelly Dixon's been teaching for 32 years. We have Spencer from San Pedro teaching the last 9 years. We have Keith from South Carolina and has been teaching for 8 years and second year teaching CS. So if you're just now joining, if you can put your name, where you're from, and how long you've been teaching in the chat channel, that would be great. And we'll get started in about 2 or 3 minutes. Looks like we have Saban, who's taught for 6 years. Leo out of Flagstaff, Arizona. Kelly updated. This is her first year teaching CSP. Welcome to CSP, Kelly. Looks like a lot of people coming in. All right. We've got Karen teaching for 3 years, but the first time teaching CS. Saban from Texas. If you're still joining, just put your name, where you're from, and how long you've been teaching in the chat area. Looks like we have Jamie, who's taught 10 years and is a CSP mentor, CSP reader, and CSP trainer. You could maybe lead this webinar. That's awesome. Okay, we'll give him about 1 more minute. Okay, we're about ready to start. And we'll be shutting off the chat area in a second, but then you'll have the option of using the Q&A tool in the upper left corner of your screen. We'll talk about that in a second. Okay, I think we're ready to roll. Okay, hi everyone, and welcome to one of CodeHS webinars in our October webinar series. We're excited you've joined us to learn about the top items to have in place for a successful year teaching Computer Science Principles, or CSP as it's called. This webinar will last about 20 minutes and will be recorded and sent out. At any point that you have a question, you can use the Q&A tool in the upper left corner of your screen. Just some quick introductions. My name is Leah, and I'm one of the curriculum developers at CodeHS. I've created some of the new CodeHS courses, and I also oversee both of our AP courses. I taught CS courses and AP at the high school level for many years, and I'm excited to talk more about how we can help you with CSP today.
My name is Will McCambley. I'm an account manager here with CodeHS. That means I work with teachers in schools just to make sure that they have answers to all the questions that they might need. They know how to use all the tools and how to find all the good resources. I recognize several of the names in the attendees list, so thanks for showing up, everybody. And yeah, thanks for joining us.
All right. During today's webinar, we will discuss best practices for pacing your CSP course, keeping up with important College Board information, and how to prepare your students for both performance tasks. If this is your first year teaching AP anything, but especially CSP, try not to panic or feel overwhelmed. There's a lot of new information to take in, but we're here to support you so that you have a successful year teaching CSP. There are a number of resources that we will share and some different dates, and we'll provide you with a single list at the end. So let's get started. We're first going to take a look at the CodeHS course syllabus that you can submit to the College Board by January 29th, and also obviously use for your own planning. The biggest issue with pacing is that you need to finish the course by roughly the end of March so that students have a month to do the performance tasks, which need to be submitted by April 30th online. So here's just a snippet from our syllabus. Each section of the syllabus has information on the unit and the approximate pacing for each. The pacing timelines are only approximations. Some units may go more quickly for you and your students, and other units may take a little bit longer. It's important to note that you don't have to create your own syllabus. We've done all that work for you, so you only need to submit ours to the College Board.
And so in addition to the syllabus, we've created some CodeHS CSP review materials. So what that looks like is a playlist for students to use on the site, as well as a course. Included in that is one full-length 74-question multiple-choice exam. In addition, there's 28 quizzes with between 3 to 15 questions. These quizzes target certain concepts from the course for review, so it's a great way to kind of develop specific concepts that students might be having trouble with. In addition, there's also the AP CSP Readers Quiz Question Bank. So this is a really great advanced resource. If you're making your own playlists and quizzes on the site, you can use this to add questions approved by AP CSP readers. And this is very useful because you can do things like sort by difficulty level and standards addressed to make sure that you're using the right content with your students. Before we move on and look at some important College Board information, do we have any questions about what we've talked about so far? And if you have them, just go ahead and ask them in the Q&A.
It looks like we have a question from Kelly. She asks, do you have copies of the rubrics used to grade the digital projects? We'll talk about that in a little bit when we get to the performance tasks. And we're going to focus more on using the College Board scoring guidelines towards the end. So we'll get to that. Okay, all right. So the College Board strongly encourages teachers to start the course audit now or very soon. You want to take care of this soon to gain access to the AP Digital Portfolio, where you can create your CSP classes, enroll students, confirm submission of performance tasks, and receive important notifications from the AP program. There are two parts to the AP CSP exam. The first one is the through course assessment, and that's due by Friday, April 30th. And it includes two parts, Explore Performance Task and the Create Performance Task, and we'll be going over those. And then there's the end of course AP exam, the actual paper and pencil exam that takes 2 hours, has approximately 74 questions, and it has multiple choice where some of the answers are pick 1 of 4, and some are multi-select where you pick 2, where the students pick 2 of 4, and that is administered on Friday, May 10th. The College Board currently requires 8 in-class hours for the Explore Performance Task and 12 in-class hours for the Create Performance Task. So that's generally about 4 weeks of school. It's possible to do this, but you're going to want to backwards plan a bit your entire year so you can get everything in before that April 30th due date. Students will gain the experience necessary to complete the performance tasks in class. Most CodeH units come with practice PTs where students can research topics in computing and create their own digital artifacts. Both performance tasks need to be uploaded to the digital portfolio by April 30th. Our course will prepare students for the multiple choice part of the exam as well. Each lesson comes with quizzes to test essential knowledge for the AP exam. And each unit includes a cumulative AP-style multiple choice exam to test their understanding of concepts in the unit and then provide immediate feedback to the students as well. And again, that part of the exam is administered nationwide on Friday, May 10th. Students submit their PTs in the digital portfolio, which is a web-based platform. Each fall, teachers will create classes in the AP digital portfolio for the AP CSP. Students can't access that digital portfolio content until the teacher has confirmed their enrollment. And just as a note, if a student creates a new account when a student already has an existing account, this can sometimes cause issues with access to the digital portfolio. So it's just something to remind students of. Some key dates to be aware of. Students can start submitting their PT components as early as November, but this is not something that's advisable because if a project derails for a student or if they change their minds about something, then they'll need to resubmit their portfolio. From December to April 30th, students need to indicate whether they intend to take the paper and pencil exam. And then by April 30th, students need to submit both PT artifacts, which includes several subcomponents that Will's going to talk about in a little bit. Just one big recommendation, don't wait until the last minute to have your students do this, because we all know that technology can have issues at different points and in different stages of student creation and also in the uploading process. Now let's look at submitting the syllabus and what the College Board calls the audit process. This is a big thing here to use at CodeHS. The syllabus that you go through the audit process, you can automatically get approved. You don't have to create your own syllabus, like I mentioned before. We'll provide the links to everything you need for the course audit and the directions for that. Once you've completed the course audit, then you'll be able to submit your syllabus. Okay, before we look at how to prepare your students for the performance tasks using CodeHS, do we have any questions? It looks like Jamie is talking about an alternative if your school allows to pull out testing for a full day, 6.5 hours. It sounds like in Miami, then give the other 1.5 hours has to be scheduled in class. This gives more time for teaching. I know from College Board that those are supposed to be in class hours, so I'm not really sure how that works there, but it might be something you want to check with your administrator and then confirm with College Board. And then it looks like she has a similar recommendation depending on, for the create task with the 12 hours. Oh, I see. They're in your class for the entire day. That's an interesting solution. If you know that works in your district and if it's allowable, as long as they're given that full time, 8 for the explore and 12 for the create, then you can, and it's in class, then you can be creative with how that's segmented out. Thank you, Jamie. All right, so Will's going to talk next about the performance tasks.
All right, so the next thing we're going to look at here are the AP performance tasks. Each student is required to submit 2 performance tasks to the College Board. One is an explore performance task and the next is a create performance task. Explore has 2 components and create has 3. So let's take a look at what those are. And just one important note throughout, these are due Friday, April 30th by 11:59 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So just keep that in mind as we're talking about these things. They do have a hard deadline that students need to meet. So first we're going to take a look at Explore, and here's what the College Board has to say about it. Computing innovations impact our lives in ways that require considerable study and reflection for us to fully understand them. And this performance task will explore computing innovation. A computing innovation is an innovation that includes a computer or program code as an integral part of its functionality. So basically what we're asking students to do here is to create some digital artifact that's going to deepen their understanding of that innovation and help explain it to other people. So the student needs to provide two things here: a computational artifact that illustrates, represents, or explains the computing innovation, and then a series of written responses to questions provided by the College Board. And so a computational artifact is kind of a vague term. It's not something a lot of us are familiar with when we first come into this course. But basically what they're referring to there is anything that you can create with a computer. So a video, an infographic, a song. Very important note with these is that the more dynamic the artifact is, the better. So something like a static PDF infographic is on the lower end of the scale, whereas a video or an interactive video or an app or program might be pretty high up there. So the next thing we're going to take a look at is the create task. And so this is different from the explore task. Instead of exploring a computing innovation, students are going to create an entire program. So some important notes from the College Board about it: the development process should include iteratively designing, implementing, and testing the program. And they say that because those are things in, there are a series of written responses to this task as well. Those are things that they ask students to talk about as they're answering the written questions. So it's important that in the development process, you're kind of guiding your students towards thinking about how they're iterating and how they're testing it. Students are strongly encouraged to work with a peer, another student in their class. And so they can submit, or they can have the same program, they can collaborate on a program, but what they submit needs to be totally different. So we'll take a look at what that is. So the student needs to provide a video of their program running, individual written responses about the program, and then the annotated program code. And so there's an extra deliverable here. We need three things. So we need a video of the program and the program itself. And so the written responses are generally going to be asking about the program, the running of the program, as well as the program code. They ask for some specific annotations, and that's where students really need to be making sure they're doing their own work. So as they're analyzing the student code, as they're creating the video of it running, those need to be individual to each student. And so one thing I wanted to mention here is that this is a really great place to use the CodeHS editor. So the video of the student's program is going to need to show the program running. And the CodeHS editor is great for this because you can look at the code right next to the execution of the program. So it makes it really easy for students to talk about how specific parts of their program are functioning, or how specific functions of the program or application they're creating are created with the code. And so good programs, this comes from the College Board, good programs will develop abstractions to manage complexity and combine multiple algorithms or functions through the use of other functions. So basically they're just talking about defining your own functions there and then defining functions that call those. And they want to see that that their students are using mathematical and logical concepts from the language that they're using. So often they're using, they'll have some, maybe an add 10 algorithm that you can then recombine into some further novel program. We have a question, so both students can have the exact same code. As far as my understanding goes, they can, but I'm going to pass that one over to our other presenters who might have a better answer for you there.
So yeah, both students, they can have the same code, but they're going to need to describe their innovation, the create a little bit differently, and they need to talk about the portions of the code that they actually were the ones that created that part. So they have to be really explicit about the part that they are responsible for. We had a couple of other questions that came in too. Kelly asked if students need additional time for the performance task, can they work outside of the class time that's provided? And they absolutely can. The only requirement is that they be guaranteed the 8 and 12 hours for each of those. So that was a really good question. And then another question popped up in the chat. Do you recommend, this was from James, do you recommend us to use a test bank of questions throughout the year, or just as we're prepping for the first 2 weeks of May for the AP exam? Actually, as a former AP teacher, I did both. I sprinkled in questions at different points when I felt that during the year when the students were ready for certain types of multiple choice questions, yeah, especially the multiple choice questions, but then also did it in the 2 weeks before. So they're not just going through 2 weeks at the end of the year. So I did both, and I think that's a good way to handle it. All right. So now we're going to look at the PT scoring guidelines. Everything that Will just talked about is in the College Board's Performance Task Directions Guide, and we're going to share out a link to that. One thing to be aware of is we do not provide rubrics for our performance tasks. The College Board is pretty strict about guidance on performance tasks outside of the items that they actually provide. And any use of templates that contain sentence starters or fill in the blanks are a violation of the task guidelines and may result in a score of 0 on a performance task. It's recommended that you use the College Board templates to help avoid suspicion of plagiarism on your students' behalf. The good news is that the College Board provides scoring guidelines or rubrics that are very detailed and can be used to grade student practice PTs. College Board has updated these every single year after each AP exam, and we're going to provide the links to the versions that will be used for the 2019 exam. The practice PTs that we provide are scaffolded, so with the earlier ones, you probably won't refer to every single criteria in those scoring guidelines, but you can definitely refer to them. All right, so we have covered a lot, and we'll share out this webinar in a handout with all the links that we talked about that you'll need for a successful year teaching CSP. Don't hesitate to reach out at any time if you have any questions later or are unsure of anything. And we've got a final slide that has a recap of all the important dates and a big link to all the resources. So these are all the big dates, just as a reminder: when to submit the syllabus, when you want to pretty much be wrapping up the course, when the PTs are due, and the end of course exam. And then the link to all the resources, and we'll email this out as well, is at codehs.com/APCSP_resources. And then the last thing we want to let you know about is we have a couple of more webinars coming up. If you happen to be lucky to teach both AP CS courses, either CSP and Java, we have a webinar for that in a couple of weeks, I think. And that's it. Do we have any lingering questions? Oh, did we miss one? Sorry about that, Will.
That's my mistake, we did.
Okay, so we have one, looks like next week, on the 5 most common questions teachers ask about CodeHS grading, and there will be answers to those questions.
One thing I did want to make sure we mentioned, in case people weren't looking at it in the Q&A, Jamie had some great advice in the chat. Students can collaborate on their programs, but as we mentioned, we need to make sure that they're writing their own responses. And that goes as far as students should, in their responses, say "I did" instead of "we did." They'll get points off for saying "we did" versus "I did this" and "I did that."
That's a great point, Will. Yep. And Yannette brings up a good point. You could have students maybe grade themselves using the scoring guidelines. That's exactly what I would do, is have them grade themselves, or even peer review some tasks for the practice ones, definitely. Okay, we have some. Just peeking at a few more questions here. Is there somewhere that shows the review questions matched up to the units in CodeHS? In the review playlist, it's broken down into, I think, about 28 or so quizzes that match up to specific topics from the course. So there's a pretty nice alignment between the course and then what's happening with the topics on the exam.
So another question we got was, do we have data on how students in general on CodeHS doing the AP exam? So we're still gathering data from the College Board, and we plan to publish a blog once we have all the info. So keep an eye out, because that will be pushed out to all AP teachers just so that they have that info.
Carrie asked, just to be clear, during the 8-hour, students may use any resources online or collaborate, but the teacher cannot help. That's correct.
And Leopold Hartsock asked, is there any sort of consensus on what may be better as far as pacing? Does a class structure look better than allowing students to be totally self-paced? So structure does look better. Definitely, if you have a highly self-paced environment, you want to be thinking about it as blended or representing it as blended. Kind of thinking, having a blended model as opposed to calling it self-paced is generally a better consensus, or that's generally what the consensus says.
Kelly asks if you can, do we have links to past projects? And we do. We'll provide the link to the College Board's projects within our the sheet that we'll be sending out. So you can take a peek at all of those, the exemplars that are there. Yannette asked about peer review of the actual Explore PT. Oh, go ahead, Evelyn.
Sorry, I'll jump in on that. So as far as peer review, they cannot get any feedback. They can grade themselves using the rubric, but they can't be peer reviewed for the Explorer that they're actually going to turn in.
It's like Kelly had her own anecdotal data to share. She had 6 students use CodeHS as an independent study last year, and all 6 scored a 3 or higher. That's great to hear. Thanks for sharing that. Okay, looks like we've answered all the questions, correct? Yes, Carrie asked, can they peer review on the practice? Absolutely. That's definitely probably a good thing. Well, thanks for joining us today. We'll be sending out the link to the recording of this webinar, and also the information with the date, with all the links that we've shared, so that you have those at your fingertips. And feel free to reach out at any time if you have any follow-up questions. And have a good day, everyone.